So you're getting a psychic mediumship reading or thinking about getting one and you don't know what to expect. This is what you should know going in. First of all, it's important to understand that I, as the psychic medium, do not see your loved ones literally standing in the room with you. This means that I, as I'm working with you, be it through Zoom, through FaceTime, or through phone, which is how I do my readings, I don't do them in person except for on rare occasions. I am not going to see them standing behind you in the room with you. This said, during your reading, I will say things such as he or she is putting their hand on your shoulder, he or she is kissing you on the cheek, and so on and so forth. When I say that, I'm actually seeing them do that in my head. I'm not literally seeing them do that to you in the room with you. So what does this mean? How do they communicate? How do the readings work? The first important thing to understand is that I see, hear, feel, and know information during your reading. When I say I see information during your reading, I see information in my mind's eye. Loved ones from the other side, whether they are human loved ones or animal loved ones, they communicate information visually like they're playing charades and like they're playing Pictionary. So they will act things out with their bodily forms like they're playing charades. They will also show me images of objects, other living people, movie-like reels. And when it comes to visuals, I get a lot of visual information as metaphors. And why does this happen? It's because they have to get very creative with their visual pieces of imagery that they're giving me. So when you think about playing charades and Pictionary amongst the living, when you are playing that game on game night with your kids or at parties, if anybody even does that anymore, you often have to get super creative with how you're getting the pieces of information across. And your loved ones have to do the same thing with me. They have to get very creative. And when they're getting very creative, I have to be thinking fast. My brain is firing behind the scenes of my forehead so fast, which you obviously are not seeing. And for that reason, I'm trying to decipher, what they are giving me. And for that reason, sometimes I will misinterpret the visuals. Just like when you're playing Pictionary and charades, you will lose the game. You will misinterpret. So when I'm psychic medium, when I am receiving visual information, I'm going to do my absolute best to interpret the visual information correctly. However, when you do not understand the piece of information I give you and you say, that doesn't make sense, that's a no, I don't get it, etc., I will tell you literally what they're doing and acting out, or literally what they're showing me on Pictionary style. And 9 times out of 10, you will understand it right away because you know them best. You know their life best. You know their personality best. Obviously, they're your person. They're your animal. You'll understand it right away, or you'll understand it once we've hung up and you've had time to think about the information, digest the information. So that is how visuals work. In terms of how I hear in my thought voice. My clairaudience comes inside of my head. This means I'm not going to hear your loved one talking, out loud in my room, in my office with me. It's going to come in my thought voice. In terms of hearing names, hearing other things like street names, school names, those sorts of things, I can only hear things that I have a memory base in my brain, in my headspace for. So if there's a super unique name, a super unique place that I have not come across in my lifetime here as a human being, that my brain has not encountered, I'm not going to be able to hear it. That's just the way energy transmission works. I'm going to receive energy transmission from your loved one, and my brain is going to receive the energy transmission, and if it does not have a knowledge base for it, it's going to, I don't know what to do with this, and it's not going to be able to receive it. It will most likely flip it to the closest thing that it has to translate it to. So, for example, let's say that there is a very unique name out there that sounds, for argument's sake, let's say that I have never heard the name Josephina in my entire life. Obviously I have, but let's just say for argument's sake, I've never heard the name Josephina and a spirit person wanted to give me that name. They would send me the energy of the name Josephina. My brain would receive the energy. I would not be able to translate it, and I might hear the name Joseph or the name Joe, or I might just hear the name J or J-O, and that might be what I tell you because I have nothing for Josephina to translate to. So that is how I hear, and that is also how names work. Names can be hit and miss with a lot of psychic mediums. I don't know why names are more difficult at times. I think it's because of the exact precision. We all go through periods where we might have a few months where names are like spot on. We are really in a groove and names are like, whoo, we're on. And then we might have a couple of months where we're just getting initials and names aren't really flowing, or we're just really not getting names at all. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for like 3 years or 33 years. That's just how names flow. So that is how I hear in my thought voice. In terms of feelings and working with loved ones, it is a lot of emotion. So I might see an image or hear something and get a flow of emotion from your loved one with it to further describe the image or the word. It is physical sensations in my body, and then I also will categorize tastes and smells here as feelings. They're technically other sensory communications, but we'll just categorize that here. So feelings are another way that your loved ones communicate. Another way that they communicate with me is just giving me knowing. They will just cause me to know things. They'll just come in my consciousness and out my mouth. So those are the ways that your loved ones work with me during psychic mediumship readings. And again, it does not matter if your loved one was a human or an animal. All of this is true for both types of spirit loved ones. Now, in terms of what to expect with your psychic mediumship reading and who we work with, who we communicate with, ultimately, at the end of the day, I cannot 100% guarantee who we will communicate with on the other side. The best way to think about psychic mediumship is it is like a science or a math equation. And by this I mean my soul energy and the soul energy of your loved one in spirit need to exactly equalize. So think about in algebra, when you were doing an algebra equation in high school or middle school, and you need to totally equalize both sides of the equation so that they were equal to one another. That is how my soul energy and your loved one's soul energy need to work with one another in order to hit, okay? So if you are really wanting to talk with your son, and I am working with mom, first off, right off the bat as your reading opens, it doesn't mean that your son is not here. Your son is absolutely here and present. It just means that mom's soul energy and my soul energy equalize and hit what I call a sweet spot first, or strongest. It's nothing to do with your son's energy or mom's energy being stronger or weaker. None of that. It's about mom's soul energy and my soul energy in the moment. Also, sometimes and quite often, loved ones will kind of stand in a lineup and arrange that on purpose. So what I tell people is that if I am working with your loved ones and we get to be, the first spirit person, the second spirit person that we're working with, and who you were really hoping to hear from, say you are deep in grief and you're really grieving a specific person, if they haven't come forward and we haven't worked with that person yet, you can stop me and give me the relationship to you only. So say mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, son, husband, etc. That word, that information, and I use that to reach out energetically for that loved one, and I try to hit that equalization. I try to hit that sweet spot. I cannot think of a time that has not worked. Maybe there's a time that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. I don't know. 99.9% of the time that works absolutely fine. As your reading starts out, when you book a session with me, I spend just a couple of brief minutes explaining the process, explaining how it works, and then we get into your 30-minute or your 50-minute reading. And as your reading opens, I connect with your first spirit loved one. I describe the pieces of information that they're giving me, and those first pieces of information should whittle down who we are with. Once we whittle down or we determine who we are with, which usually happens within the first 2 to 5 pieces of evidence, once we determine who we are with, they continue to give us more evidence, which usually has messages ingrained in it. And every reading flows how it flows. Your spirit loved one is in control. I am not in control. It's important to remember that as the psychic medium, I am the conduit. I am the messenger. I am not a dictator of your loved ones. Truthfully, I am the middleman. It's you, your spirit loved one, and I am like the telephone wire. I don't get to control the reading. I get to interpret the information and give it to you. So once we've determined who the spirit person is, sometimes they will work with us for the entire reading, especially in the cases of the first person coming forward really being who you were hoping to hear from in the event that you are grieving. Sometimes they will work with us for just a few more minutes and then bring another person forward. Some readings are working with one spirit person or two spirit people. Some readings we end up working with like 7 or 8. It all depends on the circumstances of what loved ones, what spirit feels you are needing in that particular moment. What spirit feels you are needing for your highest and greatest good for the most healing in that moment. Some readings are highly emotional with really, deep messages for you. Some readings are more humorous. They get to decide. You can ask me questions. Yes, you are able to, but at the end of the day, I cannot force them to give me what they're not wanting to, and they will not give what they do not feel is in your best interest. So in other words, I'm not in ultimate control, they are in ultimate control. One other thing to expect with the psychic mediumship readings, and typically this does not matter if it is with me or another psychic medium, however, this does come up in my readings quite frequently, is that spirit people use frame of reference. And frame of reference is when spirit people use something or a person from my personal life to get across a piece of information unique to them. And this could be in an insurmountable amount of ways. They might show me an image of one of my spirit people. They might show me an object that I saw yesterday in my life, a totally random object. They might bring up a reading I did yesterday. They might bring up a reading I did 6 months ago and refresh a piece that I totally forgotten about or totally forgot existed from 6 months ago. They might bring up my mom who is living. They can do pretty much anything, but when they do it, they need to give me like 2 or 3 different ideas of why they're bringing that person up. So for example, they might bring up my mother-in-law who is in spirit as the result of lung cancer. She passed in January. She is obviously my mother-in-law. So there's 2 scenarios or 3 scenarios there. Maybe they're bringing up her because lung cancer was an issue. She passed in January. Or the relationship of mother-in-law. That's just one example. One thing they do quite often is they will bring up the birthday months and the passing months of people in my family, both living and past. And they do that to get across relationship. For example, they do this very often with grandmothers in spirit. When I already know I have a grandma coming forward because I can feel it, they will give me my maternal grandma's passing month or my paternal grandma's passing month. And they do that so that I immediately know this is maternal grandma, this is paternal grandma. That's another example of using frame of reference. I've also gotten images of my various uncles who are over there, and I've gotten that for, Parkinson's, drunk driving accident, heart attack, their passing reasons. So frame of reference, sometimes it can be a little tricky to whittle down what it is from. They've showed me images of my children's toys, a random toy of my kids, and given me very unique reasons as to why they are showing me that. I can't think of a unique reason off the top of my head. It's been a while since they've done that. They've shown me like a toy fire truck of my son's, and I know at one point they showed me a play ring of my daughter's. I can't remember why they did that though, but they incorporate very creative reasons into using frame of reference, and they do it all the time. So that is definitely something to expect, just because sometimes it can take me, like 30 seconds to 90 seconds to work with you to determine what it is about your person that parallels and why they're doing that, or why they're using that frame of reference. One of the other most important things in terms of expectations of a psychic mediumship reading is your energetic component, what you bring to the table in terms of the success of your reading. It is important to recognize that you are 1/3 of the energy at your reading. Think of the energy of a psychic mediumship reading being like a triangle. You, the psychic medium, the spirit realm, all working together energetically. This means that if you pull away or throw up a wall, it makes it that much harder for us to work with spirit. I like to use the analogy of, let's think of spirit being high up in the sky and humanity or you being at the bottom of an ocean. As a psychic medium, my head is just barely above the top of the ocean taking a breath. And when I work with spirit, I have to fly up to the sky, work with your loved one, and then I have to hold my breath and swim down to the bottom of the ocean. And then I have to go back again, right? And I have to travel back and forth, high to the sky, hold my breath, down to the bottom of the ocean, back again. So if you throw up a wall or energetically close your heart, energetically close your mind, it makes me have to work that much harder and that much harder and that much harder. And closing your heart and closing your mind is going to be a detriment to the clarity and the success of your reading. Sometimes people might do that without knowing that they do it. Coming to your reading deep in grief is absolutely okay and absolutely not a problem. It's when we come to our reading very, very angry, almost recoiling in anger, or telling ourselves we're not angry when we truly are extremely angry, that is the biggest block from what I have experienced. We might be very, very angry at the world. We might be very, very angry with our spirit person. I have found that to be the biggest hurdle to jump, is when we're actually very, very angry with our spirit person. Sometimes we are in that place and we have not admitted to ourselves that we're in that place, or we are not ready to say out loud that we are in that place, even if we know internally we're in that place. But anger is not a place to be in when coming to a psychic mediumship reading or booking a psychic mediumship reading. So if you are in such a place of anger, I would really encourage you to do your own healing work or seek therapy before ever booking a psychic mediumship reading. Any other, emotions, sadness, grief, indecision, those are much, or anxiety, those are much softer, easier to work through, more pliable, which indecision is not really an emotion, but I just say that because a lot of people come and they will say things like, I'm feeling very lost, that sort of thing. Those are much more softer, pliable situations to work with, whereas anger is like hard stop, very hard to work with, very hard to get through, very hard for a psychic medium to come up for air, get back to spirit, come back down, okay? So that is something to understand when booking a psychic mediumship reading, coming to a psychic mediumship reading. Open heart, open mind, open energy, and understanding that you are a big part of the reading. There are pieces of information that you will need to think outside of the box in regards to, with the evidence, with understanding what your loved one is trying to say, is saying. There will typically be a couple of pieces of information that you will take with you that you'll say, I'm not understanding this, and you'll hang up, and 10 minutes later you'll be, oh my gosh, I understand what that meant. And it makes perfect sense, but during the reading, It won't in the moment. That is very common. If you are a person who is going to shut down during those two pieces of evidence that don't make sense in the moment, that will impede the reading itself, because you will pull away, you will pull yourself under the floor of the ocean, right? So you need to come to the reading understanding that those couple of pieces won't make sense in the moment, but once you hang up, they will. Okay? That is how important your energy is during the reading. You want to make sure you're staying above that floor of the ocean. Additionally, regarding that evidence that makes sense after the reading, why does Spirit do that? Why does Spirit give us pieces that might not make sense during the reading, but they make sense later? Well, a few reasons. First of all, it's not them giving us information that doesn't make sense during the reading. Sometimes it's us not realizing it. It's called psychic amnesia when that happens. I mean, quite literally, I have had people forget their loved one's birthday during the reading and say no, and then they realize, they email me later and realize, I can't believe that that's her birthday. Or I've had the most simplest things people forget. That's human nature. So it's not always them, sometimes it's us. But they will bring forward things that they know are not going to make sense in the moment because they want to work with you after I have left the conversation. And you hanging up and having an aha moment later that day or the next day as you are not even thinking about them while you're washing dishes, and all of a sudden it pops in your mind, oh my gosh, that's what that meant. That makes perfect sense. That is them working with you. That is them working with you after I have left the conversation. That is why they would want to do that. Further, they will bring things forward that haven't happened yet, such as signs that they are going to work with you on. Obviously, if they're bringing forward a piece of information that is going to cross your path in the future, it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to make sense yet. Additionally, they will bring forward pieces of information that you do not know about them, but they know that another person does, and that you will speak to that other person will validate the piece of information. So that is called third-party validation. That's another reason why some things might not make sense in the reading, but they make sense later. Another reason this comes up is they will bring forward memories that you forgot about that click later, or they will bring forward pieces of information that you can't place in the moment, but you place later because it proves to you, I don't need it proven to me because I know, but it proves to you that I'm not psychically reading you. If I just brought up everything that's forward that you're thinking about, you need to know I'm not psychically reading you. That's why they do it. So that's a bit about what to expect with a psychic mediumship reading in general, but especially with me and my style of reading. Hopefully that helps. Have any questions or comments, feel free to put them below and I'll answer as best I can. If you have questions about your own innate psychic abilities, which we all absolutely have, go ahead and grab your copy of my free mini ebook, which will explain them in greater detail. Otherwise, until next time, much love. Bye.